I'm at the height of my YouTube career. I think at one point my 2 YouTube channels were the most viewed on YouTube for like the month. And my mom, she committed suicide. At that moment, I was just like, yo, I'm spending so much time doing these videos. Granted, I'm making tons of money, but like I'm missing out on life.
Welcome to the multiverse, where we believe that mushrooms can actually change the world, and that if humans mirrored the magic and wisdom of the fungi kingdom, we would have a far more joyous and connected planet. Each week, we'll be meeting with thought leaders and experts to extract the best insights and stories across everything from functional fungi, psychedelic medicine, and so much more. Thanks for listening. Step into the multiverse with us. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Into the Multiverse. This is the shortest distance that a podcast guest has ever had to travel to be on the podcast, because today we have Jesse Wellens, who is an incredible human. I'm going to give a little intro for people that do not know you. A lot of people that are listening to this have probably seen one of your YouTube videos, but by way of introduction, not only are you my roommate, which I feel is the most important part of your title, but you're one of the most creative geniuses people probably on the planet, and one of the most creative people that I've ever been able to spend an exorbitant amount of time with. And I was deep stalking you on the internet, which I've actually never done in preparation for this episode. And here are some of the things that I learned. Well, first of all, thanks for coming on the show.
I mean, I'm sorry I was late. I had to come from upstairs. There was traffic on the 405, and sorry. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Here's a few things about you that I think that are important context to set the stage for this conversation. So you have, you're one of the most well-known YouTube creators of all time. You have videos that have 50 million views. You're a producer, you're an artist. You've worked with some really huge names. You've directed music videos for Snoop Dogg and a few other people. And I get the privilege of getting to witness your brain at work before you go to work every single day. And when I was thinking about what I wanted this conversation to serve as, is I would love to get an inner lens into your brain for people that might have watched your videos, kind of like grown up with your journey, but really unpack your story, mental health. We're going to talk about psychedelics. We're going to talk about your creative process, like all of the things, but really like kind of peel back the layers. And so to start the conversation, I would love to hear about, your view on whether you're the same person online as offline.
Am I the same person online, offline? I would say, like, I've been doing YouTube since 2006, and I definitely started turning into a character in my videos that was not exactly who I was off camera. It was more like, because on YouTube you have to be like over the top and kind of cringy in a way. And I started turning into that character on my videos because I realized that's what was working, but it was more entertaining that way. But I would say now my videos are mainly who I really am. I don't really turn up the YouTube character anymore. Maybe because I got older and I matured. I don't know. But I'm the same person offline as I am online most of the time.
What is something you would say that if people are watching your videos now, or just people that are engaging with your content, what's something that people either don't know about you, that you don't talk about a lot, or just like something surprising that people wouldn't expect?
Oh, what do people, that from like viewers that have been watching me for years that don't know about me? Is that what you're asking?
Or just people that like engage with your content, what is something you don't share?
Wow, that's a hard question for me because I've shared everything online at one point. But now, well, I mean, I don't share that I've tried psychedelics, which definitely I'm doing now. I've never shared that with my audience that I've ever used any sort of psychedelics. I've shared I smoked weed, but not psychedelics.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is a very fitting
that I can remember. Yeah, I don't think I've ever shared that. Yeah. So if you found this video and you knew me, here I am. You found out.
So I guess there's nothing you haven't shared because this is
other than
filling
that.
the gap.
Shoot, that's a really hard question for me because I've shared everything.
It can also be that, psychedelics are like the kind of really stigmatized topic to talk about.
Yeah, I think the reason I never talked about it because I was too worried about what if I could hurt any brand integrations or like any relationships with sponsors potentially, things like that.
Well, we're gonna get into the whole conversation around psychedelics, and before we do so, I'd love to talk about creativity and something that literally all of the best marketers on the planet are trying to understand, which is virality. And it's really funny because you understand something that there are entire, billion-dollar divisions of companies trying to hack into, which is what will get people to click on something, to share it, to buy it, to talk about it to all of their friends. And it's something that you've like really hacked the code of since 2006. You've been doing YouTube for like a decade and a half.
Yeah.
And so when thinking about your creative process, what would you share with people about the way that your brain works when you have an idea and you think about what's going to make something go viral on the internet?
I mean, since I've been doing this since 2006, it's changed so much, like what the roadmap was to that. So back in the day when I was doing YouTube, I realized that people really liked to feel like that they knew you personally, or they can relate to you. Like you're very relatable. Like because before YouTube, it was mainly, like celebrities and movie stars. You never really got an inside look into their lives. And I think when YouTube came out, when people were giving that, it was like the audience really enjoyed an inside look in someone's personal life. And so back then, that was one thing that I was using to my advantage. It was like just being real, like never overproducing, like having some big production wasn't really what worked on YouTube back in the day. Because like movie production companies tried to move onto YouTube and it wasn't working because it was like the relatability wasn't there. But now, what I'm learning now with social media is that it's sort of the same thing, but
just like when you have a creative inspiration, like how does your brain kind of follow an idea when you get hit with something? Like what's your creative process?
It was always like something I would want to watch or something I would want to click on or what would keep my attention. And when I have like right now, I'm doing like silly reels on Instagram,
which I love. I love them. I think they're so funny.
And I think that I'm just having fun with that. I'm like over trying to get the clicks and just having fun with things that make me laugh. But like when it comes to getting the clicks and getting people to stay, like you got to think of all kinds of different things. Like that first 3 seconds of the video are so important because people are moving so fast on social media. And like, can you get their attention for that 3 seconds to hold them right away? That's like one thing you should really think about when you're creating content online. But I mean, it's just changed a lot for me because I kind of got burnt out from making YouTube videos and stuff. And I kind of wanted to start making things that I wanted to make and not what got the clicks. So my suggestion is just make things that you would want to watch.
And I think this is a really good segue into talking about kind of, it's a blend of a few things. It's mental health, and it's also this like crazy overstimulated world that we live in. Like even what you just described, like what's going to get people to click and like thumb stop in the few second time attention span that we have of people's attention on the internet because we're so overstimulated with everything. And so when you first started making YouTube videos, like the world and the internet was not the same as what it is.
Right.
And it was interesting because we had our other roommate, Adam, had a Kabbalah class at our house this last weekend, and there's all this group of young kids and they all knew you and they all watched your videos. And, when you were sharing about, this experience of like them kind of being like, oh, how'd you do it? And like, how'd you grow your audience? I was thinking about, what a loyal following you have, especially with that generation. That feels like it's kind of like the sweet spot. People like will recognize you on the street and they'll be like, I've been watching your videos forever.
Yeah.
And there's this really cool responsibility with a platform of that size because you have such a loyal, engaged audience and you're super authentic on the internet. And yet that generation is facing the worst mental health crisis of all, like Gen Z, millennial, specifically Gen Z. And so my question is if you were kind of to gather all of those type of people in a room that were like, oh my God, Jesse, I love you. I love your videos. And you had a message to share with them about your mental health journey, what would you share with them?
Ooh. My mental health journey, I guess it would be a little different for them because I was on the other side of like social media. Like I was putting up videos and having millions of people comment on them, and I was, you know, reading them and going, okay, well, this is what I should do for the next video, and getting that dopamine from like creating content on a massive scale. So for the younger generation, I would just say, like, be careful. Like it's not what you would want. You'd think you'd want, you know? Like it's not, how can I put this? Like having that much attention on yourself is definitely kind of like can mess with your mental health for sure. It definitely, for me, like when I started, we were like the first generation of people to do that, to have that many people have access to your life and to you through comments and stuff, and then be like so massive, and then it could like kind of really kind of disappear a little bit, you know, a lot of it, because everyone grew up. They don't really watch YouTube anymore that watched me in the beginning. So I'm okay, but I've seen other creators like kind of lose it, like just like think their whole self-worth was their following, right? They didn't see what their actual self-worth was. And I was there at one point where I was like, whoa, I think I identify myself as my following more than who I am as a person. But I think moving here to Venice and meeting other people that helped me shake me out of that helped a lot.
What would you say the most impactful elements of, you know, your current relationship to mental health is? And you can even speak about it. Like, I'd love to know, you know, you said you kind of like approached that area where you were like, oh, like, is my self-worth tied to my following? I just spoke about this with other Jesse on the podcast before, but you know, if we actually think about like what our net worth is, the money and the followers that we have don't mean anything if like there's a world war, you know, like that descends upon our like homeland. Like your network and your community and your relationships are so much more meaningful, obviously for your mental health, but also just in general, those things are artificial inflations of self-worth. I'm curious like how you went from like once you started to like teeter on that edge, like what helped pull you out of it, and what did you learn? Like what did you also experience with other people that were kind of in that same boat? Yeah,
I mean, like for me, I don't think I've ever told you about it, but like how I used to make YouTube videos every single day for 6 years straight and edit them, be in them, post them, read the comments. So I was so not present. Like my mind was always thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to film today. What am I going to film? Like I was never present. I was always just trying to figure out what I'm going to film, how many views the last video got. Like for 6 years straight, it was crazy. So like when something dramatic happened in my life, when I was like, whoa, I should put this down for a second. And I did. And I ended up moving out here. And then people were kind of calling me out on it, how I wasn't present. And I didn't understand what they meant by that. But now I do. And like, I see like a lot of the younger generation that do YouTube and social media, that's all they're thinking about all day is like, what am I going to make? What am I going to shoot? How many views? They're never just like enjoying their actual presence of that at a time, right? Like,
hi guys, taking a brief second away from the show to tell you a little bit about our sponsor, Supermush. Supermush is actually a brand that I co-founded. You may have heard us talking about Supermush and or functional mushrooms throughout the show, but long story short, functional mushrooms completely changed my life. I started using them as a part of my daily routine about 6 years ago. Everything about my vitality, my skin, my hair, my energy levels were on a completely new playing field that I had never experienced before. And we started Supermush to help other people get their daily dose of mushrooms back into their world, but in a way that was really easy and on the go and accessible and tasted good, because a lot of times mushrooms don't taste great. Super Mush is actually the most effective way for you to get functional mushrooms into your system because they're in the format of functional mushroom mouth sprays. We make 3 mouth sprays for energy, immunity, and chill. A lot of people don't know this, but mouth sprays actually have the fastest absorption rates. You will feel their effects almost immediately. I use all 3 of them every single day: energy in the morning, immunity in the afternoon, and chill every single night before I go to bed. If you would like to try Super Mush, you can use code ITM15 at checkout. That's ITM15. This will give you 15% off your next order at supermush.com. We also make a whole line of really cool mushroom festival forward streetwear. And if you want to stay in the know for everything that we're up to as far as events, new product launches, you can join our text program by texting MUSH, MUSH, to 38048.
That's what I'm saying.
And do you think that, because you and I talked about this a few weeks ago, and it was really cool actually for me to get a further lens into kind of, your story and that element. Because I had known I had known that your mom had passed away, but I hadn't really, dove into the details around it with you. And so you sharing that story was really powerful for me to even hear. Because a lot of times you get, lost in the sauce of this success journey and climbing this, this artificial mountain that we create. And, I've also recently lost a parent. It's a really jarring experience, especially when it's unexpected, even if there's kind of elements around it. So there's a few ways that you can have a massive wake up experience in the world. Sometimes you just have one, right? You're just like, oh, this kind of changes your trajectory. But a lot of times, sudden death, experience with psychedelics, or if you have an actual near-death experiences are the 3 main ways I've experienced people in my life having a dramatic shift in their behavior. So I'm curious, if you could share more about that experience and how it shifted, what happened around it.
Yeah. So I'm at the height of my YouTube career. I think at one point, my 2 YouTube channels were the most viewed on YouTube for the month, maybe 3 months in a row, number 1 and number 2 most viewed, Mr. Beast level, maybe not the same numbers, but level as far as most viewed on the platform. And my mom, she committed suicide during that time, and not to get into a bunch of detail, but at that moment, I was just yo, because I was vlogging my life every day. I'm just how am I going to make videos? But then I also realized I was yo, I'm spending so much time doing these videos. Granted, I'm making tons of money, but I'm missing out on life. I feel I might miss out on life because I was always shooting everything through a video camera. So I was not living my life. For me, I was living it through a video camera. And when she committed suicide, I was just in my mind, I'm just yo, life's too short. To me, I realized I'm yo, and maybe I'll end up like her if I get stressed out. I feel I missed something. So I just freaked out. I broke off a 10-year relationship and disappeared into New York City for a while and stopped making videos completely. And just I wasn't around the right people at the time. I just kind of went by myself with nobody around to talk to, nobody. And I was just I was really lost for at least a year because I wouldn't talk to anybody. I kind of just moved around in different hotels, and it got dark for me for a minute. And then I ended up here in Venice. Andy Milonakis actually convinced me to move here. And it was my neighbor, my only friend when I moved here. And that, I don't even know what the question is, but I'm going to keep going. But what, thinking of mindfulness and personal growth. I don't know. I didn't think about any of these things when I was a YouTuber, and up until I was maybe 33, 34 when I moved here. And so when I moved here, 3 months in, I met somebody that was going to Burning Man. And long story short, I ended up at Burning Man. I didn't know anything about it, but it was a very spiritual event for me. I didn't do any psychedelics, no drugs. But at that moment, it was when things started shifting for me, being more present in community and people, because I was by myself for a year. And that was the start of my journey of getting better from like what happened for 6 years making videos and my mom. And yeah, that makes sense.
What do you think it was about Burning Man, especially going sober? Because a lot of people go to Burning Man and it's very associated with psychedelics, even though I know a lot of people, have that experience sober, but it's also a really powerful experience for a lot of people in my life after they've had someone die. Because you go and you're in this like utopian, completely different world. Like how was that experience coming from? Also, your mom committing suicide is a big deal. It's like it's not just a death. It's not just a sudden death. It's like a choice, which changes the dynamics around it so intensely. But what was it about like going from that experience to Burning Man that started to change your perspective on things?
I guess like a lot of, because I wasn't raised religious at all, so I didn't have any like sort of spiritualness in me at all. So when I went to Burning Man, on my flight in, because I was bougie, I flew in the first time, I decided to write a letter to my mom that I don't know why I never did that before, but I was like, I want to write a letter for her. And the things I wish I could have told her. So when I got to Burning Man, I come to find out that there's like a temple that everyone mourns people that's passed away, and they write letters to them. And I was like, whoa, holy shit, I already wrote a letter.
So you did that without even...
Yeah, without even knowing. So to me, I'm like already hitting the spiritual thing. Like things are happening. Like I'm like, maybe spiritual stuff is real. Like magic is real in my mind. And I went to the temple for the first time. If you guys don't know anything about Burning Man, but there's dust storms at Burning Man. I didn't experience one yet until I went to the temple with the note for my mom. It was like crazy for me. I get there, a whiteout sandstorm comes. It's like so bad you can't see in front of your hand. I'm like, okay, this is trippy. I'm like, obviously I'm thinking more into like my mom's doing this in my head. And I'm like, she's doing this. She's making me stay here. And then I was like, I didn't have a mask. So I was like, I gotta get back to my camp. So I tried to leave the temple. I ended up back at the temple. Like I must have went in a circle because I couldn't see. I was like, what the, like this is trippy. And I just had like a whole emotional like release at that temple. Like I was supposed to stay there and just like really like mourn her death and I think I needed that. And it was like people that I didn't know hugging me and stuff. I'm like, what is like for me coming from being by myself, and all this community, I was like, wow, this is really nice. And I think that was like the start of my like spirituality. Was at Burning Man that time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's also, literally the coolest thing about Burning Man, and I haven't talked about Burning Man a ton on the podcast. I just went for the first time last year, but the coolest thing about it is that it's centered around this temple of like silence and sadness and like reflection. It's like arguably the best party on earth at that time. Yeah. And it's this beautiful city that like is literally risen from the dust and then returned to that after the experience ends. But in the middle, there's this temple. And like, when I visited it, people are there, they're writing letters there. It's a lot centered around death and rebirth. So it's interesting that when you tried to leave, you were brought back. I
know. That's what was trippy to me. I'm like, that's what I was just like, okay. I was really into it to say at the end. I was like, and I didn't party. Like, I just was present, I felt like, for the first time in a long time. Because, there's cell service. Even though I did make a YouTube video there, but that was like in my flow. It was like, it was making art for me. Like, that was my art, because Burning Man is full of art. But I felt like it didn't feel like I was working. I felt like I was making art when I did make a video there.
That's such an important differentiation when you feel like you're actually flow state, like you're actually creating in a place that doesn't feel like it has external forces. It feels like it's like coming out through you. So that's really beautiful. And also, it's like the ultimate place to tap into that, because why the experience was so cool and magical is that, the world we live in, someone gave me this statistic and I love it, because experience design is fascinating. And so much of, why I even laugh about like why I spend so much time decorating our home and like doing all these things that like make spaces beautiful or experiences, artistic, is because 70% of the thoughts that you have in any moment are dictated by your environment or something along that range. And so because, at Burning Man, there's like a banana art car that's like 17 feet tall, like rolling by you. And then you have like a bunch of people on stilts walking by. And then you have like all this crazy bike brigade. And like, it's just this wild
It was like a movie set for me. I was like, I'm on my own movie set. That's how I felt when I was there the first time. I was like, this, I can make anything I want. This is like a movie.
It's like it's a canvas for like ultimate creative expression. And you could completely reinvent yourself because people, when you meet them, they're not like, oh, who are you? Look you up on YouTube, YouTube. It's a complete reinvention. And when you are allowed to reinvent yourself, it just gives you a whole different way of thinking rather than like tying us to this thing that honestly, like you, especially like you've put so much of yourself on the internet where people are identifying you with that, even if, you're definitely not the same person you were 10 years ago.
Right.
Not that neither is good nor bad. It's just like an evolution. So question for you so from here, right, to go back to the story, you go to Burning Man and you have, like start of your spiritual journey, no psychedelics.
Right.
When was the first time you did work with psychedelics? What was your decision to do so? And how was your first experience? Or like, how did they kind of first start to come into your world?
Yeah. I mean, I've played with mushrooms a little bit, even before, like when I was even in the military, I tried mushrooms. But I didn't do it like with intentions or anything. I just ate a couple mushrooms, but I don't even think I felt it. I'm always been scared of death. Like that's my biggest fear, of dying. And after that burn, I wasn't scared of death anymore. I felt like I realized what death is on that trip. And I just remember having conversations with people afterwards. And I was like, it's like I downloaded all this information about like death. And I just like had this realization in myself, like to not be scared anymore.
Do you think you were scared because of your mom?
Even before my mom died, I always thought like when you die, it's just black, it's over. But like when I had that psychedelic experience for a moment, I felt like, is this where you go when you die? Like, is this in between like world that it's like of like energy? I don't know. It was just really, I don't know how, I can't even explain it, to be honest with you. But after that, I don't have the fear of death anymore like I did.
What did not having the fear of death change about the way you lived your life?
Well, I used to just like wake up in the middle of the night and just, like wide awake, eyes wide open, and be like, "You're gonna die one day." Like I didn't do that anymore. Wow. Like I don't have that experience anymore. Even as a kid, I used to do that.
Wow. And so after that experience, how did and I've been so grateful to be able to have done a few amazing, like very guided, very therapeutic psychedelic ceremonies with you.
Yes.
And I'm curious what those experiences were like for you and some of the things that you learned from them.
I mean, the second one that I did, it was like a new, I just remember writing in my journal like about love and how like love is the most important thing for me, at least. And I think I forgot that. And I thought that kind of brought me back. Like that's the strongest energy that you could, possess to, help your own mental health. Is just always go back to love. That was the thing I realized at the end of that one ceremony that we did.
What do you think would be different about your life if you didn't experience psychedelics?
Wow. I mean, I don't know. It wouldn't be good. But I sometimes worry that because my mom suffered from depression, that I would suffer from depression. So maybe I would be suffering from depression if I didn't, And I almost feel like if she was able to utilize psychedelics, it could help her a lot. And it was like, obviously, I guess when you're struggling as an addict, you'd self-medicate with like different drugs. And she was self-medicating with, heroin and all those drugs that are just that fix for the moment. But, I think if if she was able to use mushrooms, I wish she could have used them.
One of the things that and it's a completely different story, right? But one of the things that I'm the most grateful for is that I was able to experience mushrooms with my dad, because it made the experience of death, regardless of what the circumstances are around it, so much different. And they're actually, I think you'll find this interesting because you were in the military, which is like, you've had so many different versions of your life, which also is so amazing. And like, every time I talk to someone that's in the military, I'm just like, thank you for like all of your service. And there's also so much insanity that people that are in the military have to come back and deal with PTSD. And like, you've had crazy experiences. It's like, I would love to maybe kind of like go back to that area of your life, because a lot of the work that I'm doing in the psychedelic space is connected to the research around PTSD for people that are in the military. Because when you experience a really traumatic event, we don't have the tools in our modern world to help the mental state and the psyche. And that's why psychedelics are so promising. MDMA therapy is in phase 3 clinical trials with the FDA through the work of MAPS, which is, an organization you're familiar with. And they're using that for veterans. And something that just came into my awareness a few weeks ago that I talked about this last weekend, and it kind of resurfaced, is that now they're exploring and doing trials with ketamine on the battlefield, because the experience of trauma is like how it lands in your body. And so it's the ability to, be in a neuroplastic state before trauma has the ability to like lock into your system, is an interesting concept. So I'm also curious if you can speak a little bit into like some of the stuff that you experienced in that era of your life, and if you think psychedelics have been helpful for that, if that's even been a part of your reflections.
Yeah. I mean, luckily for me, I didn't have any, combat or even have soldiers close to me that were experienced much combat. So I wouldn't know how to speak on that too much. But personal friends that I know that went into the military and came out that were in combat that I wasn't stationed with. I mean, yeah, I'm hearing that too, like the ketamine therapy, and I didn't know that they're bringing it on the battlefield. Like, that's pretty crazy to think, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it's I think it's something that they're just, there's like trials and like explorations going on with it. And the whole field of research is just so interesting, but specifically to this point, like I get really excited when I hear people talk about, your journey with or without these compounds. Like, obviously it's going to be different, but when someone asked me that the other day, I was like, oh, they're like, what would your life have been like without psychedelics? I'm like, I wouldn't even know, because so much of my awareness and my learnings have come from those experiences. Yeah. And even like changes I've seen in you, like after those experiences, it's like massive unlocks. Yeah. And so, yeah, because how many of the sound ceremonies would you say you've done? Two.
The first one was crazy for me.
What would you say your main takeaway from that one was?
I guess I don't really, I have like such a strong visual experience. And then I guess I'm not doing myself justice by trying to tap into like my mental afterwards, because I just like had such a great time. Yeah. So granted, I probably am feeling way better. And I actually, when we did combo, like we can talk about combo. Yeah. that was next level for me for my whole everything. Like I felt amazing after that. Like, my doubt in my outlook on life was completely shifted after one day of combo. Slowly went back down, but like that first day afterwards was crazy for me. Wow. I want to do it again, actually. And then for the first sound ceremony, it was just very psychedelic for me, because I don't, usually do any of that stuff that often before. And so that was like maybe the third time that I've ever done MDMA. No, it was maybe second. That was probably the second time I ever did MDMA. It was that first ceremony. And that many mushrooms. So I felt like when mushrooms like opened me up, and if I wouldn't have done the MDMA, I could have, like, the anxiety could have snuck in. But like the fact that the mushrooms opened me up, And then MDMA is like, I love everything. I love myself. I love life. And it was like, I captured all of that. And then I got to take that with me afterwards. If that makes sense. Right? Yeah, and then that's how I felt. Like, and it was powerful. Like, it definitely like brought more self-love to myself after that ceremony. But then I was having like crazy psychedelic experiences where he'd hit the gong and then I would teleport and then I'm knocking things over. And sorry.
You went into the multiverse.
I went into the multiverse. I did. I straight up. Perfect timing. I did. And yeah, it was a lot. And I would do it way more, but I don't know how much I could do that.
The biggest difference in the last year of your life is because even when we, first started to become closer a year ago, there was a few things going on. You were dealing with mold poisoning, which is something that I know intimately.
Oh yeah, it destroyed me.
Yeah, and like given that this is a podcast about fungi, I love to talk about mold poisoning because it can really mess with your psyche and combo and all these other tools. Like you're super into wellness. So all these things have been like really important, I feel, for pulling you out of that experience. But would you say you have any like lessons from mold? Is there any like good lessons that you got out of that experience?
Actually, yesterday I was thinking about it a lot. Like the year that I dealt with mold, thinking about events during that year, the year, I feel like I lost that year. Like I don't even remember. Like that whole time didn't happen. I was so brain foggy. And I guess like, what was the question? Like what
is there any like good lessons you have from mold, whether it's like post mold takeaways, anything?
Just
like what
take
did they
care of
experience?
your body. Like don't just think it's gonna go away. Like I was just like, you have to be proactive. And I wasn't. I was just like, oh no, maybe it's okay. Maybe it's so it's like that was a big lesson for me.
What do you think the biggest shift in like the last year of your life has been? Like changing homes and like all these different things. Like what are you, like would you say your mental health is now in comparison to even like, from the mold place? Like how are you feeling about like creative inspiration?
Yeah.
And things like that?
I think I'm still coming out of the mold stuff, but I was feeling very depressed during that time with the mold. And I couldn't figure out why I was getting sick all the time. And I had no energy. I didn't want to do anything. So like coming out of that, and I was living alone, but I wouldn't reach out to anybody. So now that I'm living here, and we know there's no mold here, I'm feeling better.
We definitely know there's no mold.
Yeah, I still think I have more work to do to get it out of my system. Because like yesterday, I put a shirt on, right? I put a t-shirt on that I haven't put on in a while. And it kind of smelled like the old apartment. I was like, kind of smells like the old apartment. Then I started getting sick. I was getting the back pains and I was getting a headache. And I was like, I had to take the shirt off, throw it away.
Mold is such a trip. Mold is such a psychedelic trip in and of itself because you freak yourself out so much about, you can freak yourself out. Like a lot of it's psychosomatic around like, oh my God, you don't feel safe anywhere. And it's just actually it's an extreme reflection around like how so much other things make you feel. Like I've talked about this a good amount of time, but like people are like mold, like when you have like an energetic resistance to something, or you're like, you don't feel, your nervous system doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
You can start to like trick yourself into like feeling energy depleted, all these things. So like whether or not it's true, whether or not that shirt was moldy or whatever it is, it's just such a reflection around,
No, I got triggered just by the smell, and then I put it in my brain, and then it was like, I'm sick.
Yeah.
Even if there was no mold on it, like you said.
Yeah, mold is a journey. But okay, we've covered a lot of different topics here about fungi. I have a few more. I have a few more final questions for you, and then and then you can be released to go back out into your room.
No.
Also, I forgot to mention, this is the first podcast, literally, of our entire recording that I've been convinced to sit on the other side because Jesse's beauty side is on the left side.
That's not true. I just sat here earlier than you.
It's actually nice. It's a shift in experience. It's appropriate because your entire life is about, creatively looking at things from a different angle. And so here I am looking at things from a different angle. I get to look at this nice butterfly background behind you, which I never get to do, our podcast art. Okay. The last thing that I want to end on is talking about relationship. who has been like some of the top like 2 or 3 people in your life? It can be people that have influenced you, people that you've worked with, people you've had relationships with, anyone like top figures that have been impactful for you.
Okay. And within the last like 5 years or like when?
Answer how you please.
Well, first one that comes to mind is my friend John that you met. That was my friend that kind of took me under his wing when I moved to Venice and brought me into his community. And I just really like the way that how he navigates life and how he is with all his friends. And he's been a big impact in my life, like from the past 6 years, maybe living here. So I would say John, one. Snoop Dogg. Yeah, he's impacted my life tremendously. Like we've worked a lot together, and I've worked with quite a few celebrities in entertainment space, but like Snoop is such a humble dude, and like to watch the way that he treats people, even though his status is really inspiring. So shout out Snoop. He's a really nice guy. And I would say not just because I'm on your podcast, but Alli, I would say you've been impacting my life. Great. I've been loving our relationship here in our home. We're like married, but we're not. She's like my wife.
I'm your wife starter kit.
Right. She just, it's great. I just love when you send me a text like, hey, we're out of soap. And I know we talked about this. We were like, hey, we're out of dish soap, but like we're roommates. Like you could get the dish soap too, Alli, but I'm the husband. She does the dishes all the time. So I know my place. I go get the soap. It's been great. Yeah. And I like our mornings, and you ask me what I'm grateful for and all this spiritual stuff. The old Philly Jesse would be like, what's going on? But like, I love this stuff now.
That was perfect timing because I was going to ask you as your next question.
No.
What is one thing that you would say like you're really grateful for in your life right now?
I always go back to the same thing.
I think it's a great answer.
When I ask myself, or it's always like my ability to be a creative and make a living from it and have the, financial freedom to live this life that I'm living right now. Like I'm so grateful for that. That's the number one. And yeah, that's what I always go to that when I think of it. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important message. I know you didn't share that as far as what you would share with people that look up to you and have watched your journey, but like you've really created your life out of like pure creativity. You've like completely been able to design your life based on authentically sharing your journey, humor. Like that's a huge part as well. Like your recent videos, the reason why I love them so much is because they're so funny. They're so light-hearted and like you really are like creating how many people laugh? Think about how many people laugh when you put out a video like that, and the amount of joy that then they can take into their life. Like that ripple effect is so much bigger than you even realize. Even for me, like I've been sitting here at home, like after a stressful meeting or whatever it is, and I'll watch this video.
Well, it's probably funny because you know me. So you're like, this guy,
oh my God.
I can't believe he's running around like that.
Well, it's funny regardless of whether I know you, but it's especially funny because I know you and love you. So, okay. I have a few final questions for you. One, as far as, impact and like the vision of things you want to create. And you don't have to have a super clear answer to this, but like what is the impact that you hope to make on the world with your art? Like what is the feeling that you want to leave people with?
I mean, I do really like to just make people laugh, number one, most of the time. But like now I'm moving into the AI stuff and like understanding what's capable with AI and what somebody asked me like, how are you going to change the world with AI? Like how are you going to help the world? I'm like, oh, that's a good question. How could I help the world with AI? And I was thinking that eventually because I'm making these chat bots where you can have like full-on relationships with an AI chat bot and building an avatar for you to see it and interact with it. And then I was just like, well, what if we could create like a therapist that felt really real, that gave people access to therapy that couldn't afford it, and I thought that was maybe one way I can help impact the world with AI is generating a chatbot therapist that actually feels good, because right now it wouldn't work, but I think we can get to a place.
There's more learning that has to go into the AI, but I love that. We're
not even I feel like the learning's there, but I feel like the human connection, the feel like you're having a connection with someone, it still feels like a robot. But we're going to get there, which is scary. We're going to be there.
And I also think when you were sharing about this app that Jesse created, which is incredible, called Twinsy, that you're working on, it would be so epic for people to be able to scale their offerings and information, because of people that have so much knowledge, like obviously they can share it in content, but it's not responsive. You can watch people's videos and like consume this library of information that they put out, but you can't interact with it in the way that you could with something like this.
Right.
So people that are, epic, scientists or doctors or therapists or whatever it is, being able to have that as something you can like live interact with and extract information from that can make your life better is like so incredible. So I don't even think you understand the power of what you're making, because you're like so focused on the art of it, but the widespread impact is going to be amazing.
Like we could make a version of you and just crawl all of your podcasts of all that information, and then someone can act like they're talking to you based off of all the things you've already spoke about.
I would love to have that. Right. Okay, a few final questions for you. I would be remiss if I ended the podcast without asking this, but you love Sabina so much, and Sabina is your dog, and the way that I see your relationship with her, and just like truly like the amount of love that Sabina is such a core pillar in your life. What is the number one thing you think you've learned from Sabina? She was in here, but we had to kick her out because she kept partying.
What's the number one thing I've learned from Sabina? I learned that I could keep an animal alive. That's good to know, because I've had her 2 years.
Profound.
She's pretty live.
Profound.
I guess I learned that like I'm capable of like, being fully responsible for another being's life. So maybe if I have a child, I'll be a great dad. Actually, I knew that before I had Sabina, but I learned maybe I'm not patient. But Sabina can be a lot. And I learned I'm a pushover, because I let her get away with some stuff.
She's taught you patience.
Yeah.
What would you say, this is the last question we ask everyone on the podcast, what would you say the most impactful lesson that you've learned from psychedelics is?
Most impactful lesson?
Take all the time you need.
Impactful lesson. I mean, like the whole Burning Man, like not being scared of death afterwards was pretty impactful, but I don't know if that's a lesson.
And that's the ultimate lesson.
Yeah. I mean, that was the most impactful psychedelics. I mean, I learned that I'm just know how much to do sometimes, because sometimes I do too much. My dosage is always like, whoops, I thought I could do that much.
It was like, like literal amount.
Yeah.
The spiritual Matrix is laughing behind us. He's like, she's looking for a spiritual answer.
Oh, yeah,
He's like,
spiritual.
No, I took too much. Or like, what is one of the things that you would say that just, or like, even if as it could be related to your mom, your death. I love that. I love the angle of death, but what would you say psychedelics have taught you about yourself that you wouldn't know otherwise?
Oh, no. I mean, about myself, maybe it taught me that I can, like, the love for myself was lacking. I felt like when we did that last ceremony is like when I found some more, like, how important it is and what aspects of my life are causing me to not have love for myself after that ceremony. And yeah. I think that might be it.
I love that. I got that out of that last one as well. And that's like a common reflection that a lot of people had. Yeah, Jesse just said the same thing, actually.
Really?
Other Jesse on this podcast.
Yeah, self-love.
Okay, so last thing is, what are you excited about? What's happening for you in the next 6 months? And where can people find you?
Well, I'm really excited for Burning Man. That's what I'm really excited for. Project-wise, I'm working on the AI stuff. I'm working on, we call it a podcast, but it's kind of like a talk show, mixed podcast, all done in the metaverse, but using Unreal Engine. So it will be all animated, which hopefully will drop the first episode this month. And just continue doing YouTube content and maybe another Snoop Dogg music video. That's what I'm most excited for. And you can find me, in Venice.
You can find him walking around Venice.
I don't care about being famous on the internet. I want to be famous in my neighborhood.
You're definitely well known in the neighborhood, that's for sure. You can, that was some spirit moving into the multiverse. I will leave it there. My last acknowledgement for you before we close things out is just that I've, consumed, been able to witness like a lot of your like content creation process. The stuff that you make is amazing. The music videos that you've put out there in the world are incredible. And you're truly an artist. I feel like you don't even know how impactful a lot of your work is, because you're so in the zone with creating it when you're in your flow. So thank you for making such an impact on the entire space. And I also love living with you. It's been such a treat. And you help me like within my own creative energy. And so it's been amazing. And I love you. And I'm so glad that you came and sat downstairs on the couch with me for a little bit.
It was a long journey, but I'll do anything. I'll do it.
Okay. Love you. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for diving into the multiverse with us. If you're interested in being a featured guest on the show, sponsorship, partnership, or you're just mushroom curious, we're always looking to expand our mycelium network. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Into the Multiverse, where you can find clips from this podcast, psychedelic legalization news, events that we're doing, and so much more. We've also created our own in-house consumer lifestyle brand called Super Mush. We make mushroom mouth sprays. We make a whole line of mushroom streetwear. You can find it on Instagram at Supermush or online at supermush.com. We'll see you next week. Much love.